Well, welcome everyone to our third webinar in this series, God Summons Europe Part 2. And today we begin the first of two webinars that focus on the proclamation to kings and rulers in Baha'ullah's Aqdas, the Most Holy Book. Our speaker, of course, continues to be Shahrokh Monjazeb, who is a translator of Baha'i writings into English and a great student of the writings of Baha'u'llah. And I think I will leave it off at that point and turn it over to Shahrokh for his presentation. Thanks for joining us, Shahrokh. We're looking forward to hearing your presentation today.
Thank you, Dr. Stockman. Friends, in continuation of what we covered, last time we finished off Baha'u'llah's last individual letter to the rulers, one of the rulers of Europe, namely the tablet to Pope Pius IX. And that constituted essentially the second phase. As I had mentioned previously, there are three phases in Baha'u'llah's public proclamation, which began in 1866 in Adrianople, and then the second phase to individual monarchs, the proclamations to individual monarchs, began soon after Baha'u'llah's arrival in Akka while he was immured in the army barracks prison, the most difficult period by far of Baha'u'llah's incarceration and exile to the penal colony of Akka. And as we mentioned, that these letters were likely revealed in late 1868 and more likely in the early months of 1869. And then after this, there was a respite, if you will, in Baha'u'llah's direct proclamation to the kings and rulers. And then it culminated with the revelation of the Aqdas in 1873, where a large sections of the Aqdas were dedicated to continuation of Baha'u'llah's summons to all the kings and rulers. And we will see how this was shaped within the Aqdas and who were the recipients and what were the message essentially. So in this webinar, we're going to look at the first half of Baha'u'llah's proclamation in the Aqdas. So this is Baha'u'llah's public proclamation. So the third and final phase of Baha'u'llah's public proclamation of his divine mission occurred in 1873. This time, however, Baha'u'llah incorporated his declaration to those who wielded power over all of humanity within the pages of his book of laws, the Aqdas. It is truly remarkable to observe how a significant portion of the Aqdas is dedicated to the continuation of Baha'u'llah's divine summons to all the political as well as religious leaders of the world. Now, looking at the features of the text of the Aqdas, Baha'u'llah's Aqdas is revealed entirely in Arabic. And as such, all the proclamatory passages in the Aqdas are also in Arabic. What is worth mentioning here is that, and noting that all the passages in which Baha'u'llah addresses the kings and rulers of the world, including the religious hierarchy, were all rendered into English by Shoghi Effendi and included in his collection of Baha'u'llah's writings entitled Gleanings from the Writings of Baha'u'llah, as well as his 1941 letter to the Baha'is of the West entitled The Promised Day is Come. Now, if you look at, in fact, paragraphs 78 through 84, in which Baha'u'llah addresses the kings of the earth, is the entire text of the passage 105 of the Gleanings. Now, this is what I want to focus on, which seems, again, brilliant and remarkable, is that the style and the language of this collective summons to the kings of the earth, both in the original Arabic as well as Shoghi Effendi's translation into English, is remarkably similar and consistent to his seminal work, Surah Muluk, the Epistle of the Kings, and as well as the section in the tablet to Queen Victoria in which Baha'u'llah addresses the kings of the earth collectively. So Baha'u'llah addresses the kings of the earth collectively in Surah Al-Muluk, the 50-page long seminal work that he revealed in the summer of 1866 while he was exiled in Edirne. And then there is references again and a summons, a brief summons, collectively in the tablet to Queen Victoria during the individual proclamations, the second phase. And then there is, in the third phase, in fact, the proclamations in the Kitab Aqdas begins with the address to the kings of the earth collectively. And so what I found remarkable and wonderful is the consistency of the language, even though we are talking about 7 years, and obviously the style of revelation has traditionally changed from periods, for example, in Baghdad to Edirne to Akka, early Akka, mid Akka, and later Akka period. But this proclamation phase, if you will, this 7 years, the writings are throughout the 7 years are very consistent. And we will see that, and again, if you have command of the Arabic language and you can read it, you can go and you can compare passages, for example, from the Epistle to the King, Surah Al-Muluk, and passages in the Kitab Aqdas, and they're very consistent in their style, in their even in their poetical cadence that it's very unique to Baha'u'llah's writings, especially during his proclamation. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Now, the beginning of, so there's a large sections of the Aqdas, as we said, from paragraph 78 to 84, were previously translated by Shoghi Effendi and included in the Gleanings, passage 105. The first line, again, I brought this up here, so to also for you to hear it, is quite consistent, again, with the other passages. So Baha'u'llah begins addressing the kings of the earth in the Kitab Aqdas with these words: Ya ma'shar al-muluk, qad atal malikul wal mulku lillahil muhaymin al-qayyum. So again, you could see and hear the rhythm. Ya ma'shar al-muluk, qad atal maliku wal mulku lillahi muhaymin or lillahil muhaymin al-qayyum. So as you can see, there is the rhyme there, very consistent with the other tablets and other passages. And this excerpt has been translated by the beloved guardian. O kings of the earth, he who is the sovereign Lord of all is come. The kingdom is God's, the omnipotent protector, the self-subsisting. Baha'u'llah then continues, worship none but God, and with radiant hearts lift up your faces unto your Lord, the Lord of all names. This is a revelation to which whatever ye possess can never be compared, could ye but know it. We see you rejoicing in that which ye have amassed for others, and shutting out yourselves from the worlds which not except my guarded tablet can reckon. The treasures ye have laid up have drawn you far away from your ultimate objective. You know, this reminds me of the passage in the Hidden Words where Baha'u'llah says that the wealth is a mighty barrier between the lover and the beloved. And so here Baha'u'llah echoes the same sentiment, same principle, that the treasures that these monarchs have amassed, have laid up, have drawn them far away, have moved them away from their ultimate objective. And what is their ultimate objective? We will see what Baha'u'llah has echoed throughout his summons to all the kings and rulers of the world. Baha'u'llah then continues, this ill beseemeth you, could ye but understand it. Wash from your hearts all earthly defilements, and hasten to enter the kingdom of your Lord, the creator of earth and heaven, who caused the world to tremble and all its peoples to wail, except them that have renounced all things and clung to that which the hidden tablet hath ordained. This is the day in which he who held converse with God hath attained the light of the Ancient of Days and quaffed the pure waters of reunion from this cup that hath caused the seas to swell. Say, by the one true God, Sinai is circling round the dayspring of revelation, while from the heights of the kingdom, the voice of the Spirit of God is heard proclaiming, bestir yourselves, ye proud ones of the earth, and hasten ye unto him. Carmel, Mount Carmel, hath in this day hastened in longing adoration to attain his court, whilst from the heart of Zion there cometh the cry, the promise is fulfilled, that which had been announced in the holy writ of God, the most exalted, the almighty, the best beloved, is made manifest. Baha'u'llah then continues, O kings of the earth, the most great law hath been revealed in the spot, this scene of transcendent splendor. This most great law represents the manifestation of God, which is the lawgiver. And I always wondered why the proclamations were included in the Kitab Aqdas. This could be a clue where in his book of laws, the Kitab Aqdas, the most great law is proclaiming and being established. So again, it does, to us, it may not initially make sense, but it perfectly makes sense, in the grand spiritual scheme of things, if you will. So, O kings of the earth, the most great law hath been revealed in this spot, this scene of transcendent splendor. Every hidden thing hath been brought to light by virtue of the will of the supreme ordainer. He who hath ushered in the last hour, through whom the moon hath been cleft and every irrevocable decree expounded. So you saw references to Moses, you saw references to Jesus. Now there's Islamic references as well. The moon hath been cleft. That is Islamic tradition. And some of you may want to explore that and see the provenance of that in what hadith that it has come, but it's definitely is one of the more popular traditions and religious mythology, if you will, of Islamic tradition, which is very symbolic. So, through whom the moon hath been cleft and every irrevocable decree expounded. Baha'u'llah then continues addressing the kings by stating, ye are but vassals, O kings of the earth. He who is the King of kings hath appeared, arrayed in his most wondrous glory, and is summoning you unto himself, the help in peril, the self-subsisting. So he basically says that you're deluded to think that you are the greatest kings of your, of your land, for truly the true king is the one anointed by God and sent by God. And I am, he's essentially implying, that king, the king of glory, the king of kings. Take heed, he continues, lest pride deter you from recognizing the source of revelation, lest the things of this world shut you out as by a veil from him who is the creator of heaven. And by rejecting, by not accepting Baha'u'llah, God's manifestation, then in essence, humanity is rejecting their creator. And Baha'u'llah is reminding the kings of that truth. He then says, arise and serve him who is the desire of all nations. That's one of the titles of Baha'u'llah, who hath created you through a word from him and ordains you to be for all time the emblems of his sovereignty. So he refers to the kings as the emblems of his sovereignty. So the position, again, from a theological point of view, is that Baha'u'llah, one of his functions is this creative function and the sending function. He was the sender of the messengers. He says, Inna ismil al-mursal in one of his tablets, and mursal means the sender of the message. So there is Rasul, and there is one Mursal, and then that's Mursal. So essentially, God has created, has endowed, has vouchsafed, has given the authority to the spirit of Baha, the task of sending his messengers and anointing the king and creating new realities within his kingdom on earth. By the righteousness of God, here Baha'u'llah is swearing, by God. He says, by the righteousness of God, it is not our wish to lay hands on your kingdoms. Our mission is to seize and possess the hearts of men. Upon them, the eyes of Baha are fastened. To this testifieth the kingdom of names, could ye but comprehend it. This is the message of Baha'u'llah from the beginning of his revelation. You see that again in the hidden words, that from everything that he has gifted, he's only wanted one thing for himself, the creator. It's the hearts of men, that we may remain in love and connected with him. Obviously, this is the spiritual heart that is mentioned, in the writings. So it is that connection between the creator has to take place through the spiritual hearts of every created being, every human being. And yet that is the greater covenant, part of the greater covenant of God with humanity. And yet majority of the world are oblivious and have broken that covenant for not recognizing God's will and purpose, his manifestation for this age. Baha'u'llah then continues, whoso followeth his Lord will renounce the world and all that is therein. How much greater then must be the detachment of him who holdeth so august a station. He says, this is the way the people have to be. You are more responsible. He says, far greater. You have the responsibility as the wielder of power. And so your detachment has to be greater because you are the role model. You are the example by which your subjects follow you. So so he sets the bar high for the kings. Whoso followeth his Lord will renounce the world and all that is therein, be detached. And then he says, how much greater then must be the detachment of him who holdeth so august a station. Forsake your palaces and haste ye to gain admittance into his kingdom. This indeed will profit you both in this world and in the next. To this testifies the Lord of the realm on high, did ye but know it. Baha'u'llah then concludes his final summons to all the monarchs of the world in his most holy book with this uplifting statement. He writes, how great the blessedness that awaiteth the king who will arise to aid my cause in my kingdom, who will detach himself from all else but me. Such a king is numbered with the companions of the crimson ark, the ark which God hath prepared for the people of Baha. All must glorify his name. All must glorify that king, must reverence his station and aid him to unlock the cities with the keys of my name, the omnipotent protector of all that inhabit the visible and invisible kingdoms. Such a king is the very eye of mankind, the luminous ornament on the brow of creation, the fountainhead of blessings unto the whole world. Offer up, O people of Baha, your substance, nay, your very lives for his assistance. So Baha'u'llah sets this great model. He says, when that king, that true detached king will emerge, which he hopes that would emerge, then everyone must submit and bow their heads to, and even lay down their lives for him or her, as long as he continues to follow God's will and purpose and leads his flock and becomes what Baha'u'llah in the Loh Sultan says, the shadow of God on earth, the representative, in a way, next to the manifestation of God, the king, the true king will be, which unfortunately none of them rose to that occasion and fulfilled their ultimate destiny. And they withered away, unfortunately. In the Kitab Aqdas, Baha'u'llah addresses two individual European monarchs and several other political and religious rulers collectively. So right after, immediately after his general summons to all the kings and rulers, for the third time in 7 years, he begins to address two rulers that were not as significant, or at least did not play as significant a role in 1869, while Napoleon III was at the height of his power, and the papacy and the other monarchs within Europe. But after the Franco-Prussian War, the whole geopolitical map of Europe started to change, and it became a new political arena for particularly the Prussian king, who became, as we will see, the first emperor of United Germany. So these two monarchs, namely Franz Joseph Habsburg, the king, the emperor of Austria, and later king of Hungary, now played a a more significant role till the end of the century, if you will. And of course, the Prussian German Emperor Wilhelm I, or William I. So after offering his final official proclamation to the kings of the earth, Baha'u'llah addresses the Austro-Hungarian Emperor Franz Joseph I of the House of Habsburg. Now, the Habsburgs were a German royal family who had ruled Austria since the late 13th century, and between 1436 to 1806 were crowned heads of the Holy Roman Empire. They lost their crown in 1806 during the Napoleonic Wars, and Napoleon basically defeated them. Now, this is an early photo of Franz Joseph. He reigned from December 2nd, 1848 until his passing on November 21st, 1916. So he was the longest reigning monarch in Europe in the 19th century for sure. And his monarchy actually outlasted that of even Queen Victoria by a few years. I don't want to get too much in the history and the lives of Franz Joseph, but I want to highlight certain things about him that will help shed more light on what Baha'u'llah is proclaiming and why he's being singled out here. So Franz Joseph became Emperor of Austria at the age of 18 on December of 1848, after the abdication of his uncle, Emperor Ferdinand. This was, again, during the year of the revolution in Europe. The whole political scenery in Europe changed. The great Austrian Prime Minister Clement von Metternich also had to resign and flee. So the emperor had to abdicate, and the new emperor was brought in. And this was the young 18-year-old Franz Joseph. So at the time of his accession, he was only the Emperor of Austria. But again, later on, 20 years later, so he also became King of Hungary, thus becoming the Austro-Hungarian Emperor until his death on November 21st, 1916, which was at the height of the First World War. Until 1866, Franz Joseph was also the president of the German Federation and would have become the emperor of the unified Germany had his nation not been vanquished during the Austro-Prussian War of 1866. So it is fascinating that Baha'u'llah is addressing these two rivals. They're German, both German. One is Austrian, Franz Joseph, German. The other one is Prussian German. And there was a power struggle between these two to become the head, as the most influential state within the German Confederation, to become the head of a unified Germany. Unfortunately for Franz Joseph, through the efforts of this great 19th century politician, Otto von Bismarck, who was the chancellor of Prussia, later unified Germany, he was able to secure the throne, if you will, of a unified Germany for his boss, his king, King Wilhelm I, as we will see. So Franz Joseph was slighted here. In fact, between this period from 1866 onwards till his death, I would say, for the next 50 years, his dominions, his lands kept shrinking. First, he lost sections of German-held area that Austria had held. Then, in the war with the Italians, he lost large sections that he controlled in Italy. I think the kingdom of Venice also fell to the Italian nationalists as well. And so by the time, and finally after the First World War, the entire empire collapsed. The two empires that actually collapsed during the First World War that were of great significance was one, the Ottoman Empire, and the other one was the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And this was something that he witnessed slowly, and then even after his death, that collapse continued, and eventually led to an independent Austria and independent Hungary. So Franz Joseph, as I said, was the longest reigning emperor of Europe in the 19th century, 68 years, even surpassing the reign of Queen Victoria of the Great Britain. I think Victoria's was 64 years, and Franz Joseph's was 68. He made a trip. Now there's a reference. He made a trip to the Middle East in late 1869 through early 1870, largely for the purpose of inaugurating the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal, which was initiated by the French and was greatly supported by Napoleon III, began, the work on it began in 1859 and was completed 10 years later. It took a 10-year period to create the sort of narrow canal that linked the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea, which is still being used today as a great shipping lane of commerce. So this occurred, the establishment and the inauguration, and the Khedive of Egypt, the ruler of Egypt, which was to some degree under the Ottoman rule, but there was a mutual understanding. He had autonomy to do many things himself, but still technically was under the Ottoman rule. That he invited all the monarchs, including the Sultan of Turkey, of the Ottoman Empire, and heads of state of Europe to come and be part of the ceremony, of the inaugural ceremony of this great wonder of that man had basically linked for the first time these two great bodies of water, and would prior to that, most of the ships that were going to Europe, they had to circumnavigate around the continent of Africa, which would add weeks and months to their journey. This actually cut that, so it was great for commerce. So the ceremony took place on November 17th, 1869. Franz Joseph was present, as was Sultan Abdulaziz, and the wife of Napoleon III, Empress Eugenie. Napoleon himself did not attend. He was getting ready for the Franco-Prussian War, and he was also not well. As I said to you, he was suffering from syphilis by that time. So Franz Joseph attends the ceremony and then decides to linger in Egypt. He climbs one of the, there's actually a drawing of him scaling one of the pyramids. And then he decided to visit the Holy Land, and he goes to Jerusalem. And so after Egypt, he went to the Holy Land, visited Jerusalem. In the Promised Days Come, Shoghi Effendi writes, it was Franz Joseph, or as he was known in the West as Francis Joseph, whom Baha'u'llah chided in the Kitab Aqdas for having failed in his duty to investigate his cause, let alone to seek his presence when so easily accessible to him in the course of his visit to the Holy Land. And you will see what Baha'u'llah's statement is. In fact, it's right at the very beginning. So Baha'u'llah begins his short address. There's a paragraph, a single paragraph, to the Austro-Hungarian emperor with these words. He writes, Ya Malik al-Namsati kana matla'u nur al-ahadiyati fi sijn Akka iz qasatta masjid al-Aqsa. I'll read it again. Ya Malik al-Namsati kana matla'u nur al-ahadiyati fi sijn Akka iz qasatta al-Masjid al-Aqsa. So you can see here there is Ya Malik al-Namsati and Nur al-Ahadiyati, they rhyme, and then Sijn Akka and Masjid al-Aqsa. So Akka and Aqsa are there's a rhyme. So you can see God loves this rhythm. So it's very eloquent, very majestic, but also very poetical at the same time. This is the style of these letters. You'll see this alliteration, these rhyme and meter in even the Arabic portion of it, which is typically not very common. In fact, very rarely seen unless, especially in prose writings and politically related writings. But it seems that God loves that rhyme and meter, and therefore we see it in Baha'u'llah's proclamation. So the official translation made by Shoghi Effendi and included in the Promised Days Come, paragraph 85, happens to be paragraph 85 of the Kitab Aqdas as well, reads, O Emperor of Austria, he who is the dayspring of God's light dwelt in the prison of Akka at the time when thou didst set forth to visit the Aqsa Mosque. Now, Aqsa Mosque is the third most holiest place for the Muslims. It's really interesting that even though Franz Joseph was an avowed Catholic, he was the Holy Roman Emperor, and he went to visit the Stations of the Cross, the tomb of Jesus, if you will, and everything related to Christian holy places in the Holy Land. But Baha'u'llah does not make reference to that particular holy site, where he singles out the Aqsa Mosque that is on the Temple Mount still today, and the third holiest site after Mecca and Medina. The third holiest site in Islam is where the Dome of the Rock, and you will see it's the Aqsa Mosque is actually not the Dome of the Rock. It is the mosque beside it. You will see it, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but it's on the same. They're very close to each other. The Aqsa Mosque today, the dome of it is silver. The dome of the rock, Qubat al-Sakhra, as they call it in Arabic, in Israel, is golden. But so Baha'u'llah is making reference that you came and visited, and they are in Jerusalem. So in Jerusalem, he was visiting Jerusalem, but Baha'u'llah says, when you came, you failed to pay attention to what is truly the root and not the branch. He will say that here next. He continues, Thou passed him by and inquired not about him, by whom every house is exalted and every lofty gate unlocked. We verily made it a place whereunto the world should turn, that they might remember me, and yet thou hast rejected him who is the object of this remembrance. And when he appeared with the kingdom of God, thy Lord and the Lord of the world. You know, these places are places of remembrance. Both the Bab and Baha'u'llah have stated. In fact, the Bab in his writing says that the Kaaba, the house, as it's known as the house of God, that the faithful Muslims go to Hajj, to pilgrimage, and they circumambulate it and all that. First of all, it was a shrine for the idols during the pre-Islamic times, and then Muhammad cleansed it. But it was a place, became a place because God wanted it. You know, and the Bab in the Persian Bayan talks about the fact that, you know, it's just a place that has been designated by God for the faithful, but it's a symbol that the true remembrance should be to the manifestations of God, the living manifestations of God. They are the supreme temple where everyone should turn towards. So he says that we made these places, we made the Aqsa Mosque, you know, as a symbol of devotion and reverence towards God, and yet you missed the point that, you know, that you came and you passed the one that is the most meaningful, and all these other holy sites that you went and visited were of no use, because the true point of adoration, the true qibla, the true place where everyone must turn to, was living in prison in Akka, not too far from there, and yet you failed to investigate. And this is where Shoghi Effendi says Baha'u'llah chides Franz Joseph for not investigating, you know, the manifestation of God, who was living, who was incarcerated in Akka. Baha'u'llah then continues, we have been with thee at all times and found thee clinging unto the branch and heedless of the root. You know, Baha'u'llah says that we are aware, we're omniscient. God is omniscient, and God's manifestations has been given that attribute, that quality, that characteristics of being omniscient. And in a very similar way, where Baha'u'llah wrote in the tablet to the Tsar of Russia, where he says, we heard your prayer. And here Baha'u'llah says, we've been with thee at all times. So we are aware of everything that you do, and found thee, however, clinging unto the branch and heedless of the root. Now, this is the symbol of branch. Baha'u'llah refers to himself as the Sidratul Muntaha, the tree beyond which there's no passing. But in another way, a symbol, because Baha'u'llah is the sender of the messengers, then he becomes the tree from which these branches, these offshoots, come from. So he obviously was the sender of the, you know, the Semitic traditions, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, Abraham, prior to all of them. So this is where that symbolism comes. And he says, you're holding on to the branch where the root is here. Finally, the promised one has appeared. The root is here, the tree is here, but you're still clinging to the branch. Thy Lord verily is a witness unto what I say. We grieved to see thee circle round our name whilst unaware of us, though we were before thy face. We were so close to you, and you went to Jerusalem, and yet you failed to really, the true pilgrimage was to come and visit us. the Bab says that. He says that, you know, in the Persian Bayan, while he's incarcerated in the fortress prison of Mahku, he says thousands of people circumambulate this symbol of us, and yet we, who they should be circumambulating, are incarcerated on top of this remote prison on, you know, on this mountain. And how sad and how tragic it is. Baha'u'llah then continues, open thine eyes, Franz Joseph, open thine eyes that thou mayest behold this glorious vision and recognize him whom thou invokest in the daytime and in the night season, and gaze on the light that shineth above this luminous horizon. You know, as they pray every day in the churches, as a Catholic, he echoes the same thing that he was telling the Pope, the monks that are constantly engaged in prayer. And he says, open your eyes, we're here, you know, but yet you're missing us. How tragic for them. In the Promised Days Come, Shoghi Effendi provides a brilliant retrospective analysis of the Austro-Hungarian emperor and the fate of his empire. He writes, the House of Habsburg, in which the imperial title had remained practically hereditary for almost 5 centuries, was, ever since those words were uttered in the Kitab Aqdas, being increasingly menaced by the forces of internal disintegration, and was sowing the seeds of an external conflict, to both of which it ultimately succumbed. The whole empire collapsed. Franz Joseph, Emperor of Austria, King of Hungary, a reactionary ruler, reestablished old abuses, ignored the rights of nationalities, and restored that bureaucratic centralization that proved in the end so injurious to his empire. Repeated tragedies darkened his reign. His brother Maximilian was shot in Mexico. You know, Maximilian was, and with the support of actually Napoleon III, was made the king of Mexico, the ruler of Mexico, but the Mexicans rose up in revolution, ousted his government, and had him executed publicly, which was terrible. It was a great blow to Napoleon, because he was a kingmaker, and this was one of his works, and it was one of the last things that really brought tremendous grief and devastated him just immediately before the Franco-Prussian War. The Guardian talks about the Crown Prince Rudolph perished in a dishonorable affair. The Empress, his other brother, actually, that I think he traveled with him to the Holy Land, and he commits a really stupid thing. He drinks the water of one of the rivers in the Holy Land. You know, I think it was a Dead Sea, or anyways, and he dies of dysentery. You know, which was very tragic. The Empress, the wife, Franz Joseph, was assassinated in Geneva, the Guardian writes. Archduke Francis Ferdinand, this is the one that history knows, and his wife were murdered in Sarajevo, and they were the nephews of the emperor, and which set off the First World War, oftentimes referred to as that assassination, what kind of triggered the First World War, even though you know, it was already according to Abdu'l-Baha, was a tinderbox. It was basically the whole Europe was ready to explode, and that triggered it. That assassination, Sarajevo, kindling a war in the midst of which the emperor himself died. And yeah, he died at the height of the war. 2 years into the war, there was a 4-year war from 1914 to 1918, and he died literally in the middle of the First World War in 1916. And closing a reign, the Guardian continues, which is unsurpassed by any other reign in the disasters it brought to the nation. So his reign was disastrous, and it truly was. So this is, we saw the young photo of Franz Joseph. This is Franz Joseph Habsburg circa 1908 at the age 78. This photograph was taken on the occasion of the 60th anniversary of his reign, 8 years before his death. Now, immediately after addressing the Austro-Hungarian emperor, Baha'u'llah turns his attention to the latter's arch-rival, the German king of Prussia, Wilhelm I. The British referred to him as William as well, William I, but German name Wilhelm is more correct, I believe, but either are correct. So Wilhelm I, whose victory over France during the Franco-Prussian War of 1878-71 sealed his position as the emperor of the newly formed unified Germany, is the next recipient of Baha'u'llah's summons in the Kitab Aqdas. So he was originally king of Prussia, but when Prussia and the rest of the other German states unified, and he became the first Kaiser, or the first emperor of Germany. And he also lived a very long time. He lived to be 91 years old. He died in 1888. The 1888 is an interesting year. They call it the year of the three emperors. His son, Frederick, who by then was in his late 50s and was the son-in-law of Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria's eldest daughter, Victoria, had married the Crown Prince of Prussia, later the Crown Prince of Germany. However, Frederick only reigned for a number of weeks and months. In 1888, he was suffering by then from throat cancer, and he died soon after his father. And then his son, Wilhelm, who became Wilhelm II and is the infamous Wilhelm of the First World War, and grandson of Queen Victoria. He spoke English and German, so he was half English, half German, but obviously was the ruler of Germany. So, but coming back to Wilhelm I, in The Promised Days Come, Shoghi describes this autocratic ruler of the German state in following words. He says, William I, first German emperor and seventh king of Prussia, whose entire lifetime had up to the date of his accession been spent in the army, was a militaristic autocratic ruler imbued with antiquated ideas, who initiated with the aid of a statesman, it's a reference to Otto von Bismarck, rightly regarded as one of the geniuses of his century, a policy which may be said to have inaugurated a new era, not only for Prussia, but for the world. A little bit about Wilhelm. Wilhelm Friedrich Ludwig of the German House of Hohenzollern became the king of Prussia on January the 2nd. So the Habsburg and the Hohenzollern family, or Hohenzollern, became the king. They were always rivals, but they're very old royal families that ruled certain regions of Europe for many centuries, and they can be traced back to, I think the Hohenzollern is to 11th century, Habsburg to 13th century. So they had been around for a while. So he became the King of Prussia on January 2nd, 1861, after the death of his older brother, King Frederick William IV. Wilhelm had entered the military at a young age and had fought along his father and brother during the Napoleonic Wars in the early years of the 19th century. So his life was in the military. He was a military man. He was a soldier. After the ignominious defeat of Napoleon III during the Franco-Prussian War and the collapse of the Second French Empire, Wilhelm was formally proclaimed the Emperor of the United Germany on January 18th, 1871. As I mentioned in the previous course, this historical event took place in the Hall of Mirrors at the Chateau de Versailles, the Palace of Versailles, which was a very hard pill to swallow by the French, and the French never gave the Germans, and it continued, back and forth in the First World War and the Second World War, and this hatred for the towards the Germans and towards the French by the Germans was really initiated by this act. For the French, the Versailles represents the symbol of their glory, to have an occupying force who had, after the collapse of the empire, as you know, there was an occupation by the Germans of Paris and the surroundings, and the emperor, the Prussian king, basically settled and his government, for a few months in Chateau de Versailles, and it was during this period that the declaration of him as the Kaiser of the unified Germany came January 18th, 1871, in that famous Hall of Mirrors, and we've seen the photos of that. So this was the date that Wilhelm became the emperor of unified Germany. So about 2 years later, Baha'u'llah summons the new German emperor in the Aqdas, beginning with these words. He says, Ya Malik Berlin, asma' nida'a min hadha al-haykel al-mubin. So Berlin and Mubin again rhymes. Ya Malik Berlin, asma' nida'a min hadha al-haykel al-mubin, annahu la ilaha illa ana al-baghi al-fard al-qadim. And the translation is, say, O King of Berlin, give ear unto the voice calling from this manifest temple. Verily, there is none other God but me, the everlasting, the peerless, the ancient of days. Baha'u'llah then continues, take heed lest pride debar thee from recognizing the dayspring of divine revelation, lest earthly desires shut thee out as by a veil from the Lord of the throne above and of the earth below. Thus counseleth thee the pen of the Most High. The two things that Wilhelm had was definitely pride, because now, going from being the king of just a small state of Prussia to the unified Germany, both north and south of all of Germany, obviously that, boosted his pride as being now the monarch of the unified Germany. So Baha'u'llah says, be careful that this pride and also all the, earthly riches and everything else that comes with this now title, with all this pomp and circumstance, shut you out as by a veil, becomes a veil from your creator, from your Lord, who is the, who sits on a throne, and he is the supreme king. He then continues, he verily is the most gracious, the all bountiful. Then he reminds him, Wilhelm, says, do thou remember the one whose power transcended thy power and whose station excelled thy station. Where is he? And this is a reference to Napoleon III. So this is now 3 years later, roughly, two to 3 years later, after the collapse of the Second French Empire. He says, remember what happened to the one that you conquered. Where is he? He's, by this time, 1873, Napoleon is now dead. Where is he? Whither are gone the things he possessed? Baha'u'llah continues. Then he adds, take warning and be not of them that are fast asleep. He it was who cast the tablet of God behind him when we made known unto him what the hosts of tyranny had caused us to suffer. It's a reference to Baha'u'llah's first tablet to Napoleon III that we studied in the last course. He says, wherefore disgrace assailed him from all sides, and he went down to the dust in great loss. So he says, this is the object lesson. And don't be like him, because we could do the same to you, essentially. That's what Baha'u'llah is warning Wilhelm. He then states, think deeply, O king, concerning him and concerning them who like unto thee have conquered cities and ruled over men. The all-merciful brought them down from their palaces to their graves. Be warned, be of them who reflect on this. He then continues, we have asked nothing from you. Now, this is a very small section. So his address to the Wilhelm ends right there. But then he, in Baha'u'llah, one last general apostrophe, general proclamation to the kings. So he basically, he's talking to now Franz Joseph and Wilhelm and all the rest of the other kings. And this is kind of like basically is it's his last, the very last statement. He says, we have asked nothing from you for the sake of God. We verily exhort you and will be patient as we have been patient in that which has befallen us at your hands, O conquerors of kings. He says it was you that got us where we are today, because it was because of machinations and the intrigues between the Ottomans. So Ottoman Sultan, Baha'u'llah blames Abdul Aziz, Nasiruddin Shah, Napoleon for basically turning a blind eye, you know, and not assisting, and all the other kings that Baha'u'llah has summoned and no response. Even the Tsar, which obviously the message did not get to him for a few more years. Now, remember, although these were specifically revealed to certain individual kings at the time, but they are meant for future successors and rulers of these lands as well. So they have relevance even today. They do. This is a photo, one of the last photos of Kaiser Wilhelm of United Germany. This was taken in 1884, 4 years before his death at the age of 91. Now, immediately after addressing the kings of the world and these two European monarchs, Baha'u'llah turns his attention to the Americas, North and South America, the rulers of North and South America, which in the 19th century, their foreign policy was not really international as much. They did not, particularly the United States, did not become relevant, if you will, on an international political scene until the First World War, where they came in towards the end of the war. By 1917, the American forces joined the Allies, the British and the French, and fought some battles. And their role wasn't as significant as it was in the Second World War, where they became established as a superpower. But by the mid-19th century, America was still dealing with its own internal issues. After the Civil War, it was recovering from this horrendous civil war that it had experienced, and was really establishing its states and territories at the time. So there was, but here Baha'u'llah addresses the rulers of North and South America. So at the time of the revelation of the Kitab Aqdas in 1873, there were roughly eight significant political rulers within the North and South America. And I have brought in some of the pictures, and I'm not going to talk about them. The President of the United States in 1873 was the famous Civil War General Ulysses S. Grant, who was the 18th President of the USA. He was the president from 1869 to March of 1877. In Canada, Dominion of Canada, Canada had become independent from the British to some degree in 1867. So in 1873, there was still a lot of, Canada was part of the Commonwealth of Nations of the British Empire at the time, and the flag of Canada still was the Union Jack till 1967, where it adopted the maple leaf. And then in the 80s, where the Charter of Rights and Freedom was established. So still Canada was part of the British, Commonwealth, if you will, like Australia, like New Zealand, like many of the nations. At the time, the Prime Minister of Canada was Alexander Mackenzie, who held the office from 1873 to 1878. And then Mexico was Sebastián Lerdo de Tejada, and he was the president of Mexico from 1872 to 1876. Dom Pedro II, Emperor of Brazil. Manuel Pardo, President of Peru from 1872 to 1876. Domingo Faustino Sarmiento was the 10th president of Argentina from 1868 to 1874. Manuel Murillo Toro was the president of the United States of Colombia from 1872 to 1874. And finally, the president of Chile, Federico I don't know whether I'm pronouncing this correctly, Zanartu or Zaniartu. My Spanish is not good at all, non-existent. Sorry about that. So September 18th, 1871 to September 18th, 1876. So these were the rulers at the time, and Baha'u'llah addresses them. He says, Ya muluk al-Amriqa wa ru'asa al-jumhur fiha. So Amriqa or Amriqa is Amriqa wa ru'asa al-jumhur fiha. Isma'u ما تقن به الورقة. اسمعوا ما تقن به الورقة على غصن البقاء. So you can see اسمعوا ما تقن به الورقة على غصن البقاء. So warqa and baqa is rhyming. امرقا and fiha is rhyming. And then he says إنه لا إله إلا أنا الباغي الغفور الكريم. The translation by Shoghi Effendi is, hearken ye, O rulers of America and the presidents of the republics therein. So it's just, so he encompasses everyone in North and South America, in the Americas. Unto that which the dove is warbling on the branch of eternity, there is none other God but me, the ever abiding, the forgiving, the all bountiful. Baha'u'llah continues, adorn ye the temple of dominion with the ornament of justice and of the fear of God, and its head with the crown of the remembrance of your Lord, the creator of the heavens. Thus counseleth you he who is the dayspring of names, as bidden by him who is the all-knowing, the all-wise. And he then concludes, the promised one hath appeared in this glorified station, whereat all beings, both seen and unseen, have rejoiced. Take ye advantage of the day of God. Verily, to meet him is better for you than all that whereon the sun shineth, could ye but know it. And then the final statement, O concourse of rulers, give ear unto that which hath been raised from the dayspring of grandeur. Verily, there is none other God but me, the Lord of utterance, the all-knowing. Bind ye the broken with the hands of justice, and crush the oppressor who flourisheth with the rod of the commandments of your Lord, the ordainer, the all-wise. This is the last advice here is that could be studied by great scholars, great doctors of law and statespeople, as an advice from Baha'u'llah to the rulers of North and South America, and valid even today. He says, bind ye the broken, help the broken with the hands of justice, through justice, and crush the oppressor who flourishes with the rod of the commandments of your Lord. Follow the commandments, the guidance that is given in the Kitab Aqdas, the charter of the future world civilization, the ordainer, the all-wise. So this is Baha'u'llah's advice. After proclaiming to them, he says, you must do this. So this brings us to the end of section 1. So today we covered Baha'u'llah's collective summons to the kings of the earth, again for the third time, and then the two summons to two European rulers, and then again a collective summons to the rulers of America. So if there is any questions now, and I shall invite Dr. Stockman to join me, and if there is any questions, I'd be happy to
I don't see any yet. Thank you so much, Shahrokh. This fascinating presentation. I had no idea that these guys had lived so long. I'm amazed to think that Franz Joseph was in charge during World War I, and that he had become ruler in 1848.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, that's a huge amount of change in Europe in that
Yes.
particular period of
Tremendous.
time.
Tremendous.
Tremendous amount of change.
Yes.
And I was looking at the article on the web about Austria-Hungary, and it was the second largest country in Europe in terms of area, with Russia being the largest, and the third, I think it said a third in population after Germany and Britain, and a major industrial power as well, which I had no idea. So it's
Yes.
really quite impressive that
Yes.
it was that way.
Yes.
Um,
And he, as you said, he had been there from the beginning, and yet he maintained a consistent air of centralization. And so that's um, the thing that the Guardian actually criticizes him for it, you know. So um, and yeah, I think that's a good point. And again, they live to see the disintegration of their nation. He at least did.
mhm. Yeah, he did.
Um, yes.
Yeah,
The
Wilhelm saw the opposite. He saw the downfall of himself and of his dynasty, but his country, while suffers a temporary setback with loss of territories to France after World War One, in not only Alsace and Lorraine, which had been part of France, but also the Rhineland area and the Ruhr area, which was taken by
yeah,
France.
yeah.
But
So
nevertheless, Germany, I'm afraid, came roaring back from that, and of course that produced World War II.
yes.
Um, so I was surprised we didn't come across the lamentations of Berlin and the banks of the
We
Rhine being
will we
covered with
will we will
gore.
cover that. We will cover that next time, because I wanted to only deal with individuals, because places, Baha'u'llah then addresses places, geographic places, as well as the religious leaders. And I wanted to kind of categorize that in the next section. We
Got
will
it.
come across that. Yes.
Got it. That's
Yeah.
good to know. That's
Yeah.
good to know. I was also struck um, the reference to Carmel in the Kitabe Aqdas. We're
Yes.
talking about 1873, and
Yes.
Baha'u'llah doesn't go to Mount Carmel for almost 20 years.
Yes.
So already Mount Carmel is beginning to play kind of symbolic significance in the Baha'i
Yes.
writings, even though we don't yet have the Shrine of the Bab there, we don't have any indications of its future greatness. So I was struck by that.
Yes, because of the biblical prophecies about Zion and the Mount Carmel, and even though, and that is now a location where it's near Baha'u'llah's incarceration. I mean, if Baha'u'llah could have, at this time, 1873, Baha'u'llah is residing within the walls of Akka. He's still not allowed to leave,
Right.
And he's in the house of Udi Khamar, and then eventually he's going to move to the house of Abud. So he's still within the city walls.
Yep.
And so he had no access to even getting to Carmel,
Right.
at this point. But again, symbolically, it represents the fulfillment of prophecies, because there's so many biblical prophecies that are associated with Mount Carmel. And so, yeah, there is definitely a reference. Good point that it's being brought up even as early as 1873. Yes.
Yeah, I want to keep my eye out in other works by Baha'u'llah to see how early and where else Carmel pops up. I'm going to have to
Yeah.
pay attention to that. I'm
Yes. Yes.
intrigued by that idea. One thing that I thought it would be useful for you to address is the, shall we say, persistent rumor in the Baha'i community that Baha'u'llah addressed a tablet to President Grant. And I think obviously it's the Aqdas verse text that must have triggered that idea.
Yes, I think that's it is definitely a rumor, and there's no validity to it. There's an address to the rulers of America, and again, many Americans perhaps who are spreading that rumor don't realize that the address is I mean, literally, as Muluka Amriqa wa Ru'asa Jamhura fiha. So it's basically the rulers, and it's exactly the way the Guardian has translated. It's the rulers of America and the presidents or the leaders of the republics therein. Jamhur is republics therein. So there were many republics, and United States was a republic. So it's not to, and it's America is not just United States of America that it's there. I mean, the United States of America was the largest, realm that is, but it was not exclusive to the United States. This is to all the rulers of North and South America. I was personally struck by how many republics I for example, did not know that even Colombia had, a president at that time, a united, a union. And obviously, we knew about Argentina, Chile, but Peru also had. I mean, these were all colonial, if you will, of the Portuguese and the Spanish. But I mean, Mexico was an independent nation.
Well, they had all thrown off the Spanish at that point. I'm not sure about Brazil, because Brazil, who was Napoleon III appointed somebody who's an emperor in Brazil, it seems to me, at some point.
Dom Pedro II. But no, you're thinking of Maximilian of Mexico that Napoleon III had done, and I referred to him. He was the brother of Emperor Franz Joseph, and Napoleon was playing Napoleon III was playing kingmaker, and it blew up in his face. It was very tragic because Maximilian was brought publicly and was killed in public, and it's actually, there is a festival associated today with which is part of the Mexican independence, with the killing of this poor soul, that had been, was really in a way was a puppet emperor, and but it completely, because in the same way that Napoleon had to pull his forces out of Rome, and then the Italians pounced, the same way he had to, because for the Franco-Prussian War, he had to pull some of his garrisons out of Mexico as well, and that kind of led to the downfall of Maximilian, the ruler. So yeah, so that but most of them were either independent or semi still associated, colonized, or being part of the colonies. We have to study them. I just brought those names up because that's in 1873, those were the names, but they were not really significant players in the world stage at that time. This is something North America even was not. America, as I said,
wasn't considered a world power until the Spanish-American War in 1898.
Really, for the first time, with the presidency of Theodore Roosevelt, that we're starting to see in the early 1900s. And then after the First World War, Woodrow Wilson, and again, that's where America now becomes a player, and then it became conclusive with the Second World War, and and the role that America played and American forces played in all the theaters of war during that great war. But yes, so at that point, so this thing about this tablet to Ulysses S. Grant has no validity. There is no tablet that I have seen, or I don't think I will ever see.
That's right. No, I thought it was important to lay that rumor to rest.
Yeah, I mean, Shoghi Effendi would have periodically. Yeah, Shoghi Effendi would have brought it up. I mean, I would mention it especially if it was a tablet. I mean,
Yeah.
It would have, and he would have
God passes
mentioned.
by and be there.
Oh, absolutely, it would have
Yeah.
been there. So no,
Yeah.
it's not. It's not there.
Yeah.
We can confidently say that that rumor must debunk that rumor.
Yes.
It's not. It has no validity.
Yes, exactly.
So, any other questions that have come up?
Can you give us a little bit of an outline of the topics you'll cover next week?
Next week, as I said, it's the rest of the passages, proclamatory passages of Baha'u'llah in the Kitab Aqdas, which are essentially encompasses locations, regions of that the people are residing. It's interesting, Baha'u'llah singles out certain regions.
Mhm.
And then an extended proclamation to the leaders of religion that are there, where he refers Ma'shar al-ulama, and that's the religious leaders. And so that's where the focus is going to be.
Good. Very good. Well, I don't think we have any other questions. I don't see anything in the chat or the Q&A. So thank you very much for this fascinating presentation. Very thorough summary of the lives of Franz Joseph and Kaiser Wilhelm. And next time we will then return to this last presentation in the series which stretches back now, goodness.
7 years. I actually was thinking, and this was it dawned on me. We started it in 2016. It was the 150th anniversary of
Right.
the Surah Muluk and the seminal writings. And 7 years later, this is 150th anniversary of the revelation of the Kitab Aqdas.
That's true.
So yes, so I think the
pacing
7
right
years,
along.
it has been rather fortuitous that we did it in the 7-year expanse, of covering all these. So all those webinars has been posted by Wilmette Institute. There are there that and from the beginning. So these are all posted at some point in the future. That will cover the scope, the full scope of all these these courses that we have offered. So
I was trying to count up how many individual webinars you've done, and that I couldn't do. It's probably 10 or 12, I think.
Oh, I think it's more than that. On this topic, yes, probably that. But remember the Surah Al-Muluk itself had about 4 or 5. Right. And then Loh Sultan had at least 4.
Yep.
Then
you had Fuad,
and those were 4. And then we had another. So it's getting to
16 or 17 or something.
Yeah, just in that. And then if you're talking about my other webinars, there's a lot more with the Persian Bayan, and some of them have not been even posted yet, and the 3 declarations of Baha'u'llah. But anyways,
that's true. That goes quite far back.
Yes.
Well, Mario says thank you so much and loving Baha'i greetings, and I echo his words there. It really has been quite a journey, and I do hope now that it's done that you write something up about this.
That is the hope. Once it is, our last webinar is this is the last course. But yes, I'm hoping to do that. There is a 2-volume set that I'm considering. One to the kings and rulers, the second to the leaders of religion. That encompasses more of the socio-historical analysis of the impact of Baha'u'llah's summons to all the kings and rulers of the world. God willing, if I live long enough, hopefully I'll get to do that, but we'll see.
I hope so. Well, again, thank you so much, Shahrokh. We look forward to the remaining single presentation in this series, and we're very grateful for all the work you've done to prepare this lengthy 7-year process of studying of Baha'u'llah's revelation.
Thank you. for giving me the opportunity. It's been a great blessing, and I want to personally thank you because you've been instrumental in making sure that these courses were organized and were delivered. So on behalf of the public and myself, I will thank you for all the efforts, great efforts, and you were there from the beginning, and you have moderated these sessions. And thank you so much for your support. And it wouldn't have been possible without your assistance and your efforts, Robert. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And we really are very grateful and very appreciative of everything you've done. So until next week.
Next week.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.